This summer, members of the Green Party of England and Wales will be voting to elect a new leadership team. This year, the election has attracted more attention than any previous leadership contest, with Zach Polanski, the party's current deputy leader, heading up against Adrian Ramsay and Ellie Chowns, who are standing together to be the party's new co-leaders. Today, I interviewed Adrian Ramsay and Ellie Chowns. I hope you enjoy the interview. Before we get there, please make sure you scroll down right now and hit subscribe. I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by one of the candidates for the leadership of the Green Party of England and Wales. I've got Adrian Ramsay and Ellie Chowns, who are standing to be the next party's next co-leaders. Adrian, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Chris. Thank you very much. Thanks for doing this.
Not at all. And Ellie, how are you doing?
Hi, Chris. Really well, thank you. Nice to be here.
Excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So to get things going, I'm going to ask each of you in less than 30 seconds to give your sort of pitch to the members of the Green Party as to why you should be the co-leaders. I'm going to pick on you, Ellie, to go first on this.
Well, I think we've had an incredibly successful few years as the Green Party. We've shown that we know how to win elections. We've shown that we know how to convince such a wide range of people to vote Green. And then when people have elected Greens at local level and now as MPs, they're really loving it because they know that they get people who are really committed to public service. They do good work. They stand up for those core green principles that are the root of our values. And so we need to build on that. We need to kind of build transformationally on that successful formula for winning elections. We need to convince as many people as possible that the Greens are a credible, effective force in politics and that they should vote for us at coming elections.
Adrian, your 30 seconds.
Well, very much building on what Ellie's said. Imagine if after the next general election, rather than having a horrific reform-led government, we're in a situation where Labour are short of a majority and the Green Party's got enough MPs to have a really major influence over the future direction of this country, where we can take all the things that we're all campaigning on, that Ellie and I have been campaigning for, on, all of your viewers have been campaigning on for decades outside Parliament, and make a real difference on addressing inequality, on proper funding for public services, and tackling the climate and nature emergency. If we build on our proven successful strategy, where we've won in places that people thought were not possible, and we take that to the next level, scale that up as we've done time and again, including under mine and Carla's leadership, then we could make that a reality.
We didn't have a clock running, but I think you were probably both pretty close to 30 seconds. So well done on that initially. I wanted to ask you some questions that are around the sort of things that you've been talking about in your campaign for the co-leadership. And one of the things that's sort of been front and center of your campaign has been your sort of argument that the next leaders of the Green Party need to be MPs. Adrian, I'll pick on you to go first. Talk us through why you think that's the case.
Well, I do think that's the case. And of course, it's not just Ellie and I saying that that's the case. It's people like Caroline Lucas saying that's the case from all of the experience that she's had inside Parliament and having been leader and co-leader in the past. And the reason why we're making that argument is because we have fought so hard as a party to make that breakthrough, get a group of Green MPs elected. When Carla and Denny and I were elected 4 years ago, we were told by so many people outside the party and inside that you'll never win that second MP seat. You'll be stuck on one seat for so long. Well, we achieved that through a clear strategy, through galvanising and enthusing people around the party, a laser-like focus on building that broad base of support needed. And having got those 4 MPs into Westminster, we're now at the heart of the British political debate. Ellie and I and Sian and Carla every day, every week are challenging the government, whether it's on disability benefit cuts, whether it's on the genocide in Gaza, whether it's on the backsliding on climate and nature. We are at the heart of the political debate. And it's no coincidence, it's no surprise that every serious political party who's got MPs has their leader at the heart of British politics in Westminster. We fought so hard to get there. Let's now keep us at the heart of that British political debate and build on that success.
Ellie, anything to add?
Well, basically, there's just 2 really core reasons. Number one is that if it's our MPs that are kind of fronting up everything that we're doing in the media, it reminds people constantly that Greens can and do get elected and then do good stuff when they're there. And that gives them the courage and the confidence to vote Green at the next election because they know we can win. And we know that having that confidence is absolutely crucial. And the second one is this really practical thing about Westminster is the biggest political platform in the country. You know, when the media circus around the sort of leadership election moves on, Parliament is where it is day to day. That's where new policy gets announced. That's where all of the big kind of debates are happening. And so having leaders who are MPs who are in there at that time and able to kind of nab the journalists in the corridors and so forth is just by far the most practical and effective way of making sure that we're maximising our opportunities to, you know, get our voices heard in the political conversation.
I guess there'll be people watching this who'll be thinking, hang on a minute, Adrian, you were elected as co-leader and you weren't an MP. And there was an MP for the Greens in Parliament in the House of Commons at the time. So why is it different now, Adrian?
Different now because we've got a group of 4 MPs. It wouldn't have been reasonable when we had 1 MP to say that MP had to be the party leader, although it worked very well when Caroline was, and it's worked very well at other times. But the point is now we are at the heart of the British political debate with that group of Green MPs. It's not just us saying how crucial it is to keep that Green voice at the heart of British political debate, how odd it would look to move away from that. Caroline Lucas herself is saying, you know, this would look really odd. And, you know, it's not just about looking odd, it would be odd to operate. Imagine if you had a situation, and there have been situations like this during this leadership election campaign, where if you had Zach as leader and he's saying one thing, which may or may not be in line with party policy, and the Green MPs are representing the party's position in Parliament and maybe saying something else, then who is actually speaking for the Green Party? The journalists won't see us as a serious political force that's speaking with one voice and maximising our impact. And that's why, having got those 4 Green MPs elected, we need to have that voice at the heart of British political debate, but using it to build the movement that we have. We'll have a deputy leader who'll be outside Parliament. We will be galvanising local parties around the country to build on the tremendous success we've had, but we can't sacrifice being at the heart of that national conversation that, you know, whether you like it or not, and I'd like a much more decentralised political system, but whether you like it or not in the UK, that national political conversation does happen from what happens in Parliament.
And so another aspect of your campaign is that you've talked about wanting and offering experienced, courageous, proven leadership. What does that mean? Ellie, maybe you want to go first on this one.
Well, you know, Adrian has been leader for several years now, so he knows what it involves, and we have had our most successful period as a party under the co-leadership of Adrian and Carla. Both of us have also been, you know, really totally involved in the Green movement for our entire adult lives. You know, Adrian has been CEO of various organisations within the sector. I've worked for years and years for environmental and social justice, as a practitioner in the field of international development, in academia and everything as well. And so I think, you know, we've both got this really proven track record over actually decades. Adrian, you joined the Green Party as a teenager, I think. I've been an activist since I was a teenager. So we've got this, you know, really deep roots within the movement, I suppose. And then we've shown that we know how to lead winning campaigns. I mean, I always talk about politics as a team game. It really is. You know, we've both been candidates who've got elected because of the efforts of literally hundreds of volunteers coming together, coalescing around the opportunity to win these seats. And both of our seats were previously thought of as unwinnable. So we know what it takes to win when we're coming from a position of, historically, the Greens have not been terribly successful at winning elections, but in recent years we have learned how to do it with this target to win strategy. It's absolutely proven, and so we know how to lead that. We've demonstrated it at local level and now at general election level. And I think that gives us a really great insight into what it takes for the party to do that transformationally at a much wider range.
Adrian, anything you want to add on that one?
Just to say that let's not take the huge success that Ellie's talked about for granted. We have doubled our number of councillors during the last 4 years. We've won in all corners of England and Wales. There's now over 40 councils where Greens are part of running the administration locally, as well as 860 councillors who are representing their local areas. We can carry on that massive exponential growth that we've seen, as well as building on our MP success. But let's never take it for granted because, you know, as Ellie said, I have been in the party for 27 years now. I did lead the growth of the Green Party in Norwich, as you'll remember, Chris, from work that we've done together. I led the growth of the Green Party there from having no seats, being a dormant local party, to being the largest group of Green Party councillors in the country within the space of 8 years or so. And we did that at a time when the Green Party didn't have a big profile nationally. And so many of us have done that around the country because we've learnt how to win successfully. We've shared that practice through the How to Win Local Elections manual, which I co-wrote with Chris Williams. We've been in the wilderness for a long time. We've battled local parties around the country. People watching have battled so hard to make that breakthrough for their first seat, win many more. Let's not throw that away by going back to saying, we can try all sorts of campaigning techniques that may sound good, may win you a few members, but they're not actually going to win you the elections. Let's stick with what we know works and scale it up. Ellie and I are very ambitious for the next phase of the party. We really want to scale up everything that we do, from communications to the number of target seats we have, to making sure we have target candidates that are reflective of the communities we serve, are really diverse and effective, highly impressive candidates that we know we can get in place and get elected. But we'll do that by building on the huge success we've had, not by throwing it out and starting with a new strategy.
So I'm going to pick up the sort of questions around electoral strategy in a little while, but I wanted to focus a little bit now on some other aspects of your campaign. So one of the other things that's been sort of within the narrative that you've been putting out over the last couple of months has been that you two are claiming to be, I think the phrases that you've used have been serious about real power. Some of the other language you've used is that you are not going to stand on the sidelines, you're not going to hold signs, but instead hold power. And I talk to a lot of people, both within the party and outside of it, a lot about these elections and about these sorts of things. And one of the criticisms that I've heard of that is that there are people who feel that sort of narrative is dismissive of sort of grassroots campaigning, and they feel that what's unique about the Greens is that the Green Party has always seen electoral politics and grassroots campaigning, direct action and social movements as two sides of the same coin and crucial for making change. So how would you respond to the sort of criticism that people feel like you're rejecting that form of political change? I'll go to Adrian on this first.
I agree very much with what you say, Chris, that we have always, as a Green movement, been about both those things, been about the campaigning in the grassroots, in the social movements that Ellie and I have been part of all our adult lives, and the electoral route to influence as well. And we're doing that week in, week out. So, on the day of the spending review, for example, I was out campaigning with Green New Deal Rising, supporting their campaign for a wealth tax. We absolutely need to support the grassroots campaigners, as we do on a whole range of social and environmental issues all the time. And then I'm able to go inside Parliament and ask questions to the Prime Minister and the Chancellor and say, why are we not taxing wealth fairly? Why are you cutting benefits to some of the most ill and disabled people in society? Why are you not making sure our schools are properly funded for children with special educational needs and all sorts of other issues where people are losing support for their education? We can take those questions inside Parliament, as well as being part of those campaigns, which is in the DNA of both Ellie and I. That's what we've been doing our whole lives. It's not something we've come to recently just to get elected as MPs. That is very much what we stand for, and we do that week in, week out. So, I completely agree with the premise of your question, Chris. We absolutely, as a movement, are about both those things, and as MPs, as leaders, we can do both those things. We can be out and are out on the streets, joining in with those campaigns, and then taking that message into Parliament to directly challenge the government and build cross-party support on and pressure on those issues.
Yeah, anything to add?
Yeah, I completely agree. For me, the activism, the protest side of things is completely connected with politics, and it's kind of why I got involved. I said, I've been involved in protest, I've been involved in activism my entire adult and teenage life, actually. And I got involved in electoral politics when I turned 40. And it was basically because I thought politics, the electoral side of politics is so important. I don't want to leave it to the people that are stuffing it up, basically. I want to get involved. It's such an important mechanism for making change happen. And of course, it's completely connected. The other week, I was with the Red Line, Palestine protests outside Parliament and then going straight into Parliament and working on it with inside. We take the messages of protest, we take citizen voices into Parliament. Very often we are, you know, the key people kind of there in the chamber holding government to account and saying these things, you know, whether we're talking about wealth tax or holding, you know, calling out UK complicity in genocide. You know, we are taking those voices of protest, defending the right to protest. In fact, you know, when I was arrested for defending the right to protest when I was a member of the European Parliament. You know, these things are not separate. But the key thing, for the reason that I've kind of thrown my life into the Green Party and my energies into the Green Party, is because I think that getting people elected and being within those rooms at council level, at Parliament level, is so important. You know, it needs to be both together. And so we need to be able to get people elected, as well as being part of the whole ecosystem of protest and citizen voice and action outside as well.
So one thing that viewers will know is that you are two MPs who represent rural constituencies. Now, at the moment, a significant portion of the Green Party's electoral base is very much urban. And the question that people have been putting to me and putting to others is, with two MPs representing urban constituencies rural constituencies as the party's co-leaders, is there a risk there that the issues that you all bring forward and the sort of narrative that you'll seek to build will be very different than if you were to have a leader or co-leaders that were from more urban areas? And I guess I'd ask you to respond to whether you think there is a risk of a sort of perception that the Green Party is a sort of rural, non-urban party if the two of you are elected. And I'll go to Ellie first.
Thanks, Chris. I can kind of see where people are coming from with this, but I also think it's really not true. Like any party would, you know, other parties have one leader, right? And they might be from an urban area or from a rural area. And you just wouldn't have the thing of kind of saying, oh, you're an urban MP, therefore you're never going to understand the concerns of rural areas. The whole role of leadership is to kind of represent the concerns of the entire country and Green voters in the entire country. And I mean, yeah, I live in rural Herefordshire at the moment. I went to uni in Brighton. I lived in Brighton for several years. It's not like any of us are kind of only one thing or have only one bit of understanding. And in fact, the whole kind of the polarizing sort of view of things of, rural versus urban or young versus old, or that sort of quite kind of simplistic, polarizing approach to politics, I think is really unfortunate and really kind of inaccurate. So absolutely, I want to lead a Green Party that speaks to people across the entire country. And indeed, I would push back sort of a bit gently against kind of what you were saying about, out the Green Party's base is kind of in urban areas. My experience, of course, being within the Green Party in a rural area, is that we've had phenomenal success in that rural area. And that's the case across the country as a whole. We really shouldn't kind of write off rural areas as places where we can't appeal, but we know that we can. So actually the Green Party has, a much broader base than people thought previously. Maybe when in the day where our one MP was, Caroline in Brighton, people associated the Green Party with Brighton, but actually we've shown that we can break through in all sorts of places, and we need to kind of build that out even further. We need to break through across the whole country in the Wales elections next year, in the north much more. So I would kind of gently push back against the idea that because Adrian and I both happen to represent quite rural constituencies, that means we've only got an understanding of one part of the country. I just don't think that's accurate at all.
Adrian, anything to add on that?
Just to briefly reinforce what Ellie said with a couple of points. I mean, first of all, in terms of my own background, that I grew up in a very normal background, very ordinary background in Norwich, in a city. I was first elected as a councillor representing some of the most deprived council estates in the east of England. We won many council seats off Labour in areas that were traditionally very Labour. That's where I cut my political teeth and led huge success for the Green Party at a time when we had very little profile nationally. And yes, now I'm an MP a few miles down the road in an area that's much more rural. But actually, you can exaggerate the differences between what people care about in these areas. We talk, of course, between the four of us all the time about what issues are people raising with us, and the fact that people have had their health services really undermined over a long period of austerity. People can't get access to a doctor or dentist when they need one. Special educational needs system is broken. These are because of years and years of underfunding of local government, of core services, and they affect rural and urban areas alike, just as the lack of affordable housing, just as the degradation of our natural environment. So I really think that if you look at the top issues that are affecting the four constituencies Greens represent, there's a large area of common ground between all of them.
And
sorry, go on, Ellie. Yeah.
Well, just to kind of chip in on this, for example, in my email inbox at the moment, the biggest issue that I'm being contacted about is people expressing their horror at the genocide in Gaza. That is not a concern that's just of a particular group of people, urban or young or anything. It is absolutely nationwide.
Why it's so important, Chris, that we continue to present the Green Party message in a way that has a broad appeal. If we narrow our appeal to only talk in a way that appeals to a particular section of the electorate that is more likely to be urban, more likely to be London-based, then that's going to restrict our appeal in other parts of the country where we've got large numbers of councillors. Most of our councillors are in rural and suburban areas, and I really want us to be targeting Labour seats at the next election, but there will be Conservative seats we'll want to target as well, where people have been let down by complacent MPs for a very long time, as they had in Ellie's seat and mine. And there were models for this. If you look at the last time we had a Labour government that was really failing people that had drifted a long way from its core values under Tony Blair, then the Liberal Democrats at that time, who I think were much more progressive than they are now, they had a leader from a very rural seat, but they were winning lots of seats in urban and rural areas. And you can have that appeal as a progressive party, and we can do that with our green set of values in a way that I think we won't if we narrow our appeal and our focus.
So I'm going to pick up some of those questions on sort of electoral strategy in a moment, but there's one question before we get to that I wanted to put to you specifically, Adrian, and it's because this is an issue that's, I guess, been raised both prior to this election campaign starting and during it, and it relates to your position on trans rights. So you faced some criticism about some of the comments that you've made in the past, including from groups in the party such as the Young Greens. In particular, I think a lot of people point towards your appearance on the Today programme after the Supreme Court ruling on the Equality Act, in which you were asked numerous times whether trans women are women, and you evaded the question. So I wanted to ask you, firstly, if you could clarify your position on that, and also whether you continue to support the party's position on trans rights.
So thank you for asking me about it, Chris, because I think it's important that we're really clear where we stand. And the first thing to say is, of course, I fully respect anyone's identity who I'm talking to. I mean, that's the way I've always operated in life, going back a long time, where I've worked with trans people who've been party members or constituents who I've represented back when I was a councillor. You just meet people as you find them and engage with them and represent them in the way that you would anyone else. And I mean, I'm absolutely sure the vast majority of Green Party members, and I also think the vast majority of the public, absolutely operate in that way. And that's the sort of society that I want to see. So, that's the starting point. Ensuring absolute respect for individuals, respect for people's identities, and making sure that if there is discussion around particular policies, which is bound to be, that's done in a respectful way. But it's starting off with, as I do with my constituents all the time. I was at a Pride event in my constituency the other day. You're showing your support, as I do, for the LGBT plus community, and treating people as you find them, respecting their identities.
So that's a useful starting point, but I guess specifically the question you were asked in the Today programme is, do you believe that trans women are women? So I'll ask you that directly now.
So as I say, Chris, I respect people's identities and take people as I find them, and that's what I think the vast majority of Green Party members do, what I think the vast majority of the public does.
People watching this will be concerned that you haven't been able to give a yes or no answer to that question there, given that party policy is very clear and explicit in that it says that trans women are women, trans men are men, and non-binary people are non-binary, and says that we need to move towards demedicalizing the transition process, making it easier for people to have their gender recognized, and so on and so on. And you were put to this question, I think, by Nick Robinson, and I'm putting it to you now, and you haven't been able to give a straight yes or no answer. So what should people make of that in terms of your position?
What people should make of it is that I recognise that this is a sensitive issue that you need to talk about in a sensitive way, and that I respect people's identities. I engage with people in the way that, I take people as I find them, and there's all sorts of ways in which I've supported improvements in LGBTQ plus policies at different times, both as an MP now and having, I spoke at the first ever Pride marches in Norwich when I was a councillor going back over 15 years. So, of course, I respect people's identities. I also recognise that it's not a straightforward issue. So there will be, I think, in most situations, people will be able to use services in ways that accord with their self-identified gender. But there will be circumstances in society where services need to be provided based on biological sex. And the debate that we're having, that society's having, is about in what circumstances do you do that? And Carla Denny and I issued a joint statement when the EHRC produced its guidance saying this is extremely blunt, it's really rushed, it hasn't listened to the voices of trans people who are affected by these rulings, who won't be able to carry on their day-to-day lives in the ways that they have been if it's fully put through. And there needs to be a much more thorough process of listening to everybody who's affected by this to ensure that services can be provided in a way that meets everybody's needs. But let's not pretend that's straightforward. There will be circumstances where services need to be provided based on biological sex rather than self-ID gender. And we need to also do that in a way where we ensure that trans people still have access to the services that they need in those circumstances. Now, am I going to try and answer exactly what those circumstances are now in the course of this call? No, I'm not. I mean, and actually what one of the trans women who was at the Pride event in my local constituency the other day, what they said to me was, I had lots of really productive conversations. They said, can you call for Parliament to have a proper in-depth inquiry review of the HRC guidance when it comes out to make sure it is properly scrutinised, that you look at what are the circumstances where services are provided based on gender, when they provided based on biological sex, how to ensure everyone's needs are met. It's that sort of in-depth evidence-led review, listening to everybody who's impacted by this, obviously including the voices of trans people. That's what needs to happen, rather than any politician coming on and giving you a glib answer and pretending that that a highly complex issue is straightforward. I'm not going to do that.
So I will move us on in a second. I don't want to dwell too long on this, and I do want to bring Ellie in on it as well. But before I do, I wanted to ask you again, Adrian, do you support the Green Party's current policies on trans rights?
I support most of the policies that are there on trans rights. I've supported the ban on conversion therapy, for example, which I think needs to be done in a way that listens to what the experts are saying, and all the expert evidence that I've seen suggests that, and the government is committed to do that. So I hope that comes forward. I also think we need to do more to make the process of acquiring a gender recognition certificate less bureaucratic. Again, that's a commitment the government's made, but hasn't yet come forward. But I think there needs to be proper consideration of what that new system looks like and how we ensure that it's brought in a way where services are provided that can meet everybody's needs.
So, Ellie, I said I'd bring you in. By way of intro on this, do you support the Green Party's current policy on trans rights?
Broadly, yes. And you're asking the question, do I believe a trans woman is a woman, a trans man is a man, and non-binary identities are real and valid? And yes, absolutely, socially. I do recognise that there's a difference between biology and gender, between sex and gender. And I think that's where this can get a bit crunchy. I fully support trans people's rights. Everyone has the same right to be treated with respect and dignity, to be able to access services without barriers. Everyone has the same fundamental human rights. There are some areas where biology should be taken into account in addition to gender or alongside gender. And for me, sports is an area where I think sports governing bodies should be able to make decisions. and when you're dealing with vulnerable groups, when that might be prisons or services for survivors of sexual abuse in particular, where biology is a relevant factor. But, you know, for the vast majority of purposes, for example, toilet use, trans women should be able to use women's toilets. I think that's completely obvious to me. And I absolutely understand and empathize with the frustration and the fear and the frustration and the fear that trans people feel and tell me they feel as a result of the Supreme Court judgment and the EHRC interim guidance and the impact that that's having on their lives. So I do think sometimes there's a danger in just having very, very polarized conversations about this, because I think there are some areas where there's potential conflict between rights based on biology and rights based on gender, but those aren't unsolvable. You know, it's possible to provide support for female survivors of sexual abuse who really, because of their circumstances, want to be offered services only by biological females. And I can understand that. And at the same time, of course, every trans woman should be able to access support for survivors that is also relevant to her. So I suppose I feel frustrated that sometimes the conversations are a bit binary about this, and sometimes that question that you asked, is a trans woman a woman, is used by a very kind of bad faith interviewer, sort of wanting to do a kind of gotcha thing. And yeah, I suppose that's what I mean when I say that we need to be able to have conversations about the areas where discussions about rights are a little bit crunchy, but everybody has the same rights. And a trans person, a trans woman, a trans man, a non-binary person, I absolutely stand by and support their rights to live in the gender that they wish to live in.
Yeah, very well said, Ellie.
So I am going to move us on from this conversation because we spent a little bit of time on it. I know we could spend the full hour that we've got together on this, but I think there are lots of other questions people would want to hear about. So I'm going to ask you a little bit about the next general election. Ellie, how many seats can the Greens win in the next general election?
This is another one of those slight gotcha questions that journalists like asking. You know, I want the Greens to have the number of seats that corresponds to our support in the country. So if we had that number of seats now, it would be dozens, right? And we don't, because we've only got 4 because we've got a grossly unfair electoral system. So actually at the next general election, I'd like us to be operating under proportional representation and to have those dozens of seats, unless we can persuade the Labour government to do that sometime in the next few years. And flipping heck, it would be in their interest, because look at the way that politics is going and the gross inequity of the system that we've got at the moment. I think, you know, we've got a process as a party right at the moment happening at the minute, this path to parliament process for selecting our target candidates, our target areas. And I know myself from involvement in the previous iteration that takes time to go over time. But I want us to be like targeting absolutely more than one seat in every region. I want us to be targeting multiple seats in every region. And I think we should be really ambitious about that and recognize that that is going to cost huge amounts of money and huge amounts of time and energy and effort. And also my own experience is that kind of 1 year out from the general election, we had kind of, you know, not that many active activists in our area, not very much money at all. We kind of sat down and said, we need 400 volunteers regularly volunteering, kind of delivering leaflets every month. We need £100,000. Oh my goodness, how are we going to do it? And we did it. We mobilized. So we know how to do that. We know how to kind of build that snowball and get it going. And part of it is the belief, and part of it is the structures and the systems to make that happen, and the kind of professionalism of the campaigns that we run. So I'm sorry, Chris, I can't and I won't put a specific number on it, but I hope I've kind of communicated my ambition for the party and also my belief that we can do it because we know how to do it.
Adrian, can and will you put a number on it?
I agree entirely with Ellie's response, and we are hugely ambitious for the next phase of the party. We want to scale up, and not only that, we've got the track record of showing we can do that, not only from the seats that we've won, but from the strategy that Carla and I put in place 4 years ago, that so many people said to us, you won't achieve that, you won't win the second seat. It's been tried time and time and again, and we haven't done it. Well, it's no coincidence, Chris, that we did it. We did it because we put that strategy in place that we ran over several years. We galvanised huge enthusiasm from around the party. We raised large sums of money. I've personally got a lot of experience in raising large sums of money, both for the party and in roles that I've done as a charity CEO. And we've got to scale up all aspects of what we do as a party to be able to do that. So, we're not just saying we can do it. We have actually got the evidence that we're the right people to lead the next phase of the party. And, this is all the more reason why we've got to build on the credible strategy, the proven strategy that we've got. And, we are getting towards voting time. So forgive me for being quite explicit, but Zach has said in interviews, I've heard him say in interviews, that we're just winning, that we've been winning in an incremental way, and that's not going to work if we're going to win far more seats. Well, first of all, it's not been incremental. We've actually had exponential growth in our numbers of councillors, numbers of MPs. But secondly, we can't throw out the existing strategy and just think that by, louder comms, we're going to win more seats. These are debates we had in the Green Party decades ago. The reason we've had the success we have in recent years is because we've become ultra focused on making sure that we can make this horrible electoral system, if it continues there, work for us by targeting our resources, building the structure of the party, and communicating the Green Party message in a way that has a broad appeal that you have to win under first past the post. So let's not go back to the debates of the past, the electoral wilderness years that we've had far too much time in. Let's build on a successful strategy that's working and take it to the next level in the ways that Ellie's talked about.
So I guess the question, though, there is that very clearly the sort of platform that you stood on last time around when you stood for co-leader with Carla Denyer, Adrian, was, you said you would win a second MP. You managed to get 4. So you could say, look, we were vindicated in that strategy and that approach. I guess the question that some people will be asking is, how scalable is that approach? Because obviously part of what delivered those 4 MPs in the last general election was being able to throw the absolute kitchen sink into those seats, getting activists from all across the country to knock on doors and deliver leaflets over a really extended period of time. Obviously, the more target seats that you have, and you didn't give me a number, but from what you've said, you're looking probably at something like at least double digits. That becomes much harder to scale. So what does scaling up the sort of target to win model for parliamentary elections look like, Adrian?
Well, we certainly are looking at least double digits, yes. Well, let me be clear, and I'll turn your question around, because you said, is the model scalable? Let me pose the question to you, Chris. Is there any other way of doing it? I mean, if you look at, for example, how the Liberal Democrats have won 72 seats, it was exactly by doing that targeted approach in every single one of those seats. That's the only way that parties outside of the top 2 under the voting system we have win the seats that we do. So what's the alternative? I mean, the alternative could be, and this is, if you look at what happened in Australia this time when we went back from 4 seats to 1, the sort of community organising approach they adopted there is quite similar to what Zach's advocating for. We can't assume that where we're at now is something we can take for granted. We must never take anything for granted. So we've got to adopt something that actually is proven to work. And yes, of course, we can scale it up. Maybe, we might be able to get away with doing 80% of what we did in each of those seats next time around, because we've got a higher national profile and we've got big plans for stepping up our comms as well. But we can't do it just by comms alone. If we did, then, we'd have seen the breakdown of the 2-party system well before now. So let's build on something that actually works, that's actually rooted in success, that's actually got us out of the wilderness years that we were in for so long. I don't want us to go back there. I want us to not only scale up, but to actually have real opportunity to put green policies into practice, which in a hung parliament and with experienced green leaders at the heart of British political debate, we could well see happen.
Ellie, anything to add there?
Yeah, just on this kind of thing of So we won our seats, Adrian and I, in Carla and Sean, actually, we all won our seats with the help of people from outside those seats, green activists who came and supported us and chipped in. And we're super, super grateful to them. It was an amazing team effort. But that doesn't mean that we're kind of limited, because actually that's been an incredibly sort of positive learning experience. I was speaking at Hustings in Derby the other day, and somebody came up to me saying, I came over to help you with your campaign. Your poster board operation was fantastic. We've adopted that ourselves now in our area. So there's this seeding of campaign techniques and kind of this sort of spreading of inspiration. And I know that myself, because when I first got involved in the Green Party, I was travelling around the West Midlands to support other council campaigns in their area. And that kind of, that learning from what people were doing in other areas, bringing it back to your own place, and then using that kind of inspiration to help activate people locally. So there's no reason whatsoever why within a constituency of like 60,000 people, 60,000 adults or something, 65,000, electors, you wouldn't be able to find 400 volunteers who you could activate within that constituency to kind of mobilize and run a really effective campaign. If you've got the model, that you know how to run it, if you've kind of got that, learned the lessons of what we've done already. So kind of, obviously we can't immediately scale up to kind of running target campaigns in all 650 seats kind of nationwide, but we can definitely scale up that model that won our seats, those 4 seats. We can absolutely scale that up way, way, way more widely, because we've learned such valuable lessons from it. And it's not kind of just reliant on being able to have literally a quarter of the green activists in the country come to one location. It really isn't. We can have a much more sort of localized, inspirational campaign, and people get involved. People at local level who aren't even members of the Green Party get really excited about the fact that, oh my goodness, we could get a Green elected, and then they get stuck in and mobilised, and then they end up joining the Green Party after the campaign as well, because they're so energised by it. So it absolutely is a fully scalable model.
So we haven't got loads of time left together, so I'm going to put one more question to you on sort of electoral strategy question before I move on to some other areas. And it relates to the sort of development we've seen over the last few weeks, where it appears more than likely that by the time of the next general election, there will be a new left-wing political party in operation, possibly led by Zara Sultana, possibly with Jeremy Corbyn, possibly with some other characters involved. It's unclear yet what form it will take. But your campaign has been very clear and put out statements in relation to that party, and has said, this new party means that the Greens need to maintain their unique identity. What do you mean by that in practice, Ellie?
I mean, we have got a unique identity, and I think people really understand it. We talk about social, economic, and environmental justice as all completely interlinked. And I think it's crucially important, climate action, tackling the nature crisis, those are issues that appeal, to so many people. What is it, that recent survey, 89% of people want stronger climate action. This is central to our DNA. And for me, I think there's no contradiction between being kind of really, really rooted in our strong commitment to recognizing the reality of the environmental crises that we're facing and needing to have policies to address them, and also being really, really clear that's about social justice. These things are totally, totally interlinked. And unfortunately, that just isn't something that we hear, that we have heard from Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana, and the conversations that are being held about that. I mean, it's not really a good look, is it, if you announce that you're setting up a new party with somebody and then literally several weeks later nothing has happened. Everybody knows there's kind of all sorts of shenanigans and kind of conflict between the people involved and stuff. I mean, it's really not a good look. So my message to anybody who kind of wants to change politics for the better, who's frustrated with effectively the betrayal of the Labour Party, the hope that many people had in the Labour Party a year ago. Actually, what they've done ever since then, the 2-child benefit cap was the kind of first thing, and then the winter fuel allowance, the UC and PIP, the genocide, the cutting of the aid budget, the wealth tax, all of these issues where Labour has just failed people's hopes so much. Here is the Green Party. We stand for all of those things that you care passionately about, and we stand for a fair electoral system where every single person's vote counts equally, and we stand for tackling the climate and nature crises that face us, and they're really, fundamentally existential. So come and join us. The Green Party has a really unique and important place within the political ecosystem. We need to get more people elected because that helps us to get our policies, pushed forward, not just because of the things that we say, but because that pushes other parties to recognise and take on those views too.
Adrian, briefly, anything to add on that?
Well, Ellie's put it really well and explained why we shouldn't get overly distracted by this. I mean, the last time the Green Party got distracted by a Corbyn-led party in 2017, we gave away lots of one-way gifts to other parties in the election with lots of stand-downs with getting nothing in return, and the party went backwards. So, we're in a strong position here. We're the ones with 4 MPs, 2 million votes at last year's general election. We need to build on that, and we do that by maintaining our distinctive Green Party identity. If you look at the recent YouGov polling about how people who voted for different parties in 2024 viewed other parties, then with the Conservatives, Liberal Democrats, Labour and Reform, the Green Party had a bigger appeal. People were more open to voting Green from all of those places than they were open to voting for a Corbyn and Sultana party. And we support every single one of the things Sara Sultana's asked for, but because we have a distinct Green identity, our appeal is much broader. So let's let Jeremy Corbyn go ahead and set up a new party if he wants to, but let's not become the support act. Let's keep our Green Party distinct identity that has a wide appeal.
So I'm going to move us on to what I've been describing as the quickfire round of these interviews, and I'm going to be asking you, please, if you can, answer these questions with a single word answer. I'll give you a little bit of time at the end to elaborate on any of them if you wish to. Preferably, I'm looking for a yes or no. Other people have given me possiblies and maybes, which is also acceptable. But I'm going to put 6 questions to you now, and I'm going to ask Ellie to go first in all of these, and then Adrian second. So, Ellie, should the UK remain a member of NATO?
Yes.
Adrian? I think that was a yes from Adrian, but I didn't quite catch it. But yes, great. Is overpopulation a significant issue that needs tackling when we address the climate emergency, Ellie?
No.
And Adrian?
I think you have to look at population as part of the mix of issues, but it can be overly exaggerated in ways that are deeply problematic.
More than one word, but I'll let you off. Next up, Ellie, should HS2 be completed in full?
Ooh. I'm hesitating because I don't know exactly what in full means.
So I guess typically people refer to the London to Birmingham leg and then the northern leg as well to Manchester.
Sorry, more than one word. Not in the way that it's been done so far. High-speed rail is a great idea. HS2 was terrible.
Adrian?
Well, yeah, I mean, most of the problems with HS2 have actually been on the London to Birmingham leg, which is the bit that's ended up getting built. So I support the direction Green Party policy's gone in, really, which is that given that it's happening on the London to Birmingham leg, we don't want to be in a situation where the northern connections miss out. But of course, the route needs to be done in an environmentally sensitive way.
And see if I can get you to be more disciplined on the next one. Does nuclear power have a role to play in a sustainable energy system, Ellie?
Not new nuclear.
Adrian?
And that's exactly what I would have said, yeah.
And finally, is ecological sustainability possible under capitalism, Ellie?
Oh, maybe. I'm going to have to elaborate on these.
That's fine. Adrian?
It's definitely one that needs elaborating on because it depends on how you define capitalism. Are you talking about the local privately owned business that is has a few employees all on a good terms and conditions producing organic food or recycling secondhand goods or whatever, or are you talking about globalized consumer capitalism where people are on really poor terms and conditions in a gig economy? So, Greens have a very different vision for what the future of the economy needs to look like. And it's not just about capitalist or not. It's about localization. It's about changing our definition of what economic success is, away from GDP towards more informed measures. So, it depends on how you define capitalism, which, there's been many a PhD about, I think.
Very briefly, Ellie, I'll let you expand on that one as well if you want to, or any other ones.
Okay, so NATO absolutely needs reform, but it's a bit like, you can't leave every club you're in that's got problems. You need to kind of stay in and fix them. Overpopulation is actually overconsumption that's the problem. And that is much more important problem than the issue, than the number of actual people. And capitalism's hugely problematic. And growth obsession is hugely problematic. But yeah, I kind of want to get into the details of kind of exactly the critique. Definitely. So is sustainability possible within capitalism? Not the current sort.
You're going to have to leave it there on those elaborations, because I do want to get to my less serious questions before we have to leave. And there's a few of them, and people always tell me these are the most difficult ones. So strap yourselves in. So Adrian, I'm going to ask you to answer these ones first. So first of all, there have been 6 leaders or co-leaders of the Green Party in its history. Who's been the best?
Oh, that is very hard to answer, because the reason why it's hard to answer is because there's been the challenge has been different at different times. So if you look at the challenges that Caroline Lucas had as leader, and I was her deputy leader the first time round, we didn't have any MPs then. We had probably around 100 councillors. We had very little national media profile. So then winning that success in Brighton, which we did through the first time around when we made a breakthrough into Brighton Pavilion, that was a huge success. But then if you look at what we achieved under Natalie, when the party membership grew enormously and we built the party's profile at a time when we still didn't have significant national profile, that was what we needed at that time. So you can say positive. I could go through saying positive things about all of the leaders we have, which I mean in a really heartfelt way. I've been proud to be a party member under all of the party leaders that we've had.
Lee, can you pick one and one only?
To be honest, Caroline Lucas. When I got involved in politics 10 plus years ago, it was because I was horrified by the rise of Farage, and I wanted there to be more Caroline in politics and less Nigel, basically. And so, yeah, she was, a real kind of model for me of what a politician should be.
Someone should definitely put the slogan "More Caroline and Less Nigel" on a t-shirt. I'm sure that would be deeply popular. Adrian, my next question for you is, you're in this contest up against Zach Polanski. What do you admire most about him?
It's a really, really good question, because we have to remember in internal contests that we are all in the same party, and of course there's lots that I've worked together with Zach on in the roles that we've had. What would I highlight? Clearly he is a good performer. He's an actor by background. He's good at delivering his lines.
Ellie?
Yeah, I think Zach's a fantastic public speaker. I remember a conference in Brighton. I think he did a brilliant speech, and I said that to him then. And yeah, he is, he is trained obviously in that. And I remember one time Zach and I together got the party started at conference, getting onto the dance floor when it was all a bit quiet. So yeah, that's a positive.
So a few final questions. And Adrian, I asked you this one 4 years ago, and I'll see whether it's changed. What is your favourite Green Party policy?
I'm definitely not sure if I'm going to remember what I answered 4 years ago, Chris. Well, look, we've talked about lots of crucial policies today, and I've been a Green Party member since I was 16 for all sorts of reasons, and was initially motivated to join around our policies on climate, our policies on global justice. But what I haven't said today, and maybe not everyone watching will know, is animal protection issues are a personal passion of mine. I've been campaigning in Parliament to try to phase out factory farming, and in particular move away from the proliferation of mega farms that we're seeing. And that's an issue that I will continue to champion.
Lee, you've had a little bit of time to think about it. What's your favourite policy?
Do you know what? I want to be really honest here, Chris. I haven't read all of our policies. I haven't read everything that's in PFSS, and I'm always I'm really really passionate about encouraging more people to get involved in politics and to get involved in standing for elections. And one of the things I say is you don't have to have kind of read every single policy and have the answer to every question that somebody might ask you on the doorstep. What people want is kind of real people that they can kind of who they believe listen to them and care about the things that they care about. And so for me, I did actually sit down and I read the 2015 Green Party European election. No, 2014 was it? Anyway, I read that European manifesto before I joined the Green Party, and I thought I agree with 99.9% of this. This is the party. It was actually going to a local party meeting that made me think I'm going to join. So for me, it's not about the policies. It's kind of about the people and about the focus on getting that fundamental green principle of greener and fairer. We have got to move our country, our constituencies, our counties, our towns. We've got to move to being greener and fairer. And so it's those general principles, things that unite us, that is my favourite thing about the Green Party and all of the people that it brings together.
So very, very quickly, before we have to wrap up, two final questions for you and maybe 1 or 2 word answers on both of them. So Adrian, I asked you what your favourite policy is. What's your least favourite Green Party policy?
I can definitely answer that, Chris, because I got asked about it a lot during the general election. So our policy saying that we're not keen on C-sections for women giving birth was very unhelpful at the general election, where someone had dug that out from a 30-year-old policy that was buried in the Policy for Sustainable Society. It of course wasn't in our general election manifesto, and whatever the details of that argument, I think it was really unhelpful having that there and suggesting that we were in any way wanting to limit the choices and the medical options available when women can be in really difficult positions of childbirth. So I would like us to get rid of that.
Thanks, Adrian. Very quickly, Ellie, because I know you have to leave. What's your least favourite Green Party policy? And then my last question for you will be, who in the Green Party inspires you the most? So if you get those in nice and quick before you have to dash off.
Chris, I'm really sorry. It's kind of like the previous answer. Like, I don't know what all the policies are, so I can't choose one in particular.
If you can't answer that one, then who in the Green Party inspires you the most?
I mean, I kind of related to my previous example. It was Caroline that inspired me originally to get involved in the Green Party, and just the idea that we could get people elected who just stood for the complete opposite of what Farage and his ilk stood for, not just in policy terms, but also in kind of style of politics and what they represented. So that was, but then there are so many unsung heroes in our party, people who nobody kind of knows about, but they're the total foundation of it. I would not be here without those 400 people who helped to get me elected, and it's them sort of as a group that inspire me. The effort and the energy, the time, the money, the commitment that people put into working to make green politics kind of buzz and thrive and grow. So all of the kind of anonymous people who are the total strength of this party.
Adrian, very briefly, who in the Green Party inspires you the most?
Well, there's lots of people who do lots of our elected Greens all around the country, past and present leaders, as we've talked about. But like Ellie, I wanted to shine a light on unsung heroes, of whom there are many, particularly councillors. So there's lots of brilliant councillors all around the country. And I'm thinking in particular of Andrew Stringer, who was the first Green councillor in Suffolk 22 years ago. We've now got over 60 councillors in Suffolk. He laid the ground for that, and is a councillor in my constituency. And as Ellie says, we've built the successes we've had on the back of that. And then I also think about people like Alison, a party member in one of the towns in my constituency, who comes along to every action day, who's taken the initiative to build up an email list of supporters in the town so that me and our local councillors for that area can regularly tell people about the issues we've been working on. And it's people like Alison and party members like her all around the country. Every local party will have people like that, whose dedication, whose skills that they bring, who's just being there as a smiling face when you might have come in from a rainy canvassing day or had a tough media interview, who's there to support you regardless. And, you know, these people in a member-led organisation are what really make us who we are.
What a note to end it on. Thank you both so much for this conversation. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks so much.
Chris.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that interview. If you did, please let us know in the comments down below. Make sure you hit the like button and, of course, as always, hit subscribe.